everybody, it's AJ back again, and once again, this is not a monster ecology video. I am about to create a monster ecology video, but I just was going over some of the later, bigger monsters that I'm going to be covering later on, and it occurred to me that I wanted to talk about legendary actions, legendary creatures, lair actions, and things like that. If you're just flipping through the, and as a caveat, just for my channel in general, I don't really want to talk to you as if you've never played Dungeons & Dragons before, you're a noob, and I'm introducing you to the game. I don't assume, if you're watching these videos or listening to them as you drive into work or whatever, that you're a newbie to Dungeons & Dragons. I just assume that I'm just talking to people who have played this game, and I'm giving insight from having played it for a very long time. In that, I'm never going to talk down to you about things as if you have no idea. I'm just going to talk about the things and assume that you're following along. So, in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, legendary creatures, if you just read through the monster manual, you may get the impression that it's only the big bads who are legendary creatures, and those are the examples they give, so that's the very reasonable impression to have. However, you're not restricted to that. A legendary creature can be just that. It can be any creature that's legendary. So this is your opportunity to use the rules for legendary actions to single out otherwise ordinary creatures which you want to be special boss monsters. So it could be a goblin chieftain or a orc trader who just is a wily guy that gets away or has resources and things like that. It could be an unusually intelligent foe. A hobgoblin commander with a peculiar scar, who the player characters have taken an interest in, so you decide to single them out to be slightly more impressive than other hobgoblins, and give them a reason to do nasty and terrible things, and make them a greater dramatic challenge. And legendary actions and lair actions are your perfect opportunity to insert this into combat in a structured and ordinary sort of way that the player characters can come to rely on as fair and equitable. So they give you the slot as initiative count 20, losing all ties. So it's the very last action of a combat round. And that's your time, that's your DM's time to say, okay, what environmental effects that can the monster do additional to any other actions it's taken that turn? Some really amazing creatures can take an action at the end of every player's turn, or you could even alternate it so that it's 2 extra actions that's taken at some point during the round at the end of another character's turn. But the lair legendary actions are taken at the end of the entire combat round, no matter where the creature has fallen on the initiative count. It could have gone first, it could have gone third, but it's always going to have a lair action or a legendary action at the end of it. So legendary actions are usually typical abilities is the ability to manipulate something in the environment, the ability to use some sort of environmental effect, or use special equipment, or some special ability outside of its basic stats. And if it's a creature such as I mentioned, the Hobgoblin Commander, he may have special equipment, like a potion of healing, or a magical wand, or a scroll, or a potion of some other kind, or some sort of trap or mechanism, or he may actually order troops to do a special maneuver. And much like the warlords of 4th edition, order troops to do things outside of their turn, additional to their turn. So he's lending them his action to do things. Lair actions are where it's an environmental effect in the lair. So this could be special terrain. He could cause the ground to give away under their feet. He could cause some trap to activate. Some sort of hindering terrain that causes a difficult obstacle, or some sort of ability check is required to make it through a damaging or otherwise disabling or hindering effect. And this can be, there's such a vast array of things that this could be that I could talk about it for hours, but I won't. I'll leave it up to your imagination what those could be. But it depends entirely on what sort of environment they're in. If it's a caravan full of merchants, they may have wild animals or dangerous cargo that they can unleash upon their assailants. They may have some sort of method of catching wild animals and things, such as cages or net guns or tranquilizer darts or some sort of gas or a potion which erupts into a sticky foam, non-lethal sort of hindrances, that sort of thing. They could unleash swarms of bees. There's all sorts of things they could do. They could use a charm effect or a scroll of sleep, and you could have sort of worked out what that effect would be prior to the combat so that you can just do it really quickly. And in the case of regional effects for really legendary creatures, you can have plots which you have evolved before the combat even began, so a lead up to it. And a good example is with my campaign, I've got a legendary Fey creature. It's a Fey dragon, and it has regional Fey effects. So the Fey has been a constant element of the campaign that has become more and more intense the closer they get to their objective. And it becomes a theme so that the players start to become very aware that they are surrounded by Fey. They're in a Fey nexus. Fey just seems to be prevalent everywhere. And it's getting more intense as closer you get. And so when you're in the actual lair of this legendary creature, which is the nexus, the center of this Fey effect, it doesn't seem unusual that it is calling forth Fey allies, or creating Fey effects, or intensifying and opening Fey portals, calling in swarms of pixies, all sorts of stuff, because the players have been primed for it. They're expecting it. They are at the source of this effect, and it makes sense. You don't just drop it in on them. So this is where legendary creatures or legendary effects come into play, or where you've built up the background for a creature which is it's a dramatic element. It's become a boss fight, even if it's not overly important, even if it's not very powerful, even if it doesn't have much of a chance of overwhelming them. It can still be just the players become focused on it. The players have become interested. It's built up an emotional resonance with them. The story, their interest, their focus is driving that creature to become more important, and you respond to it by making it a more challenging opponent. Even if they get their hands on this individual, they could easily best them. But it may be so that you always find some way to give them an excuse not to kill it. Maybe it gets away, maybe it has some toady sort of wheedling bargain that it makes just before they do the death blow, so that if you let me live, I can take you to the thing, I can find this thing that you're looking for. And they're like, we really want to kill this guy, but we'll let him live as long as he can get us the thing that he's promised. And yeah, make those promises, make those bargains, and follow through with them. Otherwise the players will not trust you again. So yeah, legendary actions, not just Tarrasques and giants and monsters and things like that. Great big things, dragons. They can also be gremlins and other sorts of creatures. Generally not animals. They're usually the intelligent type of things where you can get some sort of a feedback. But it can be very interesting to say that you're in the lair of a creature. You're in the hunting terrain of a creature that is just toying with you. Maybe it's got plenty of food for itself, and the actions of an adventuring party is disruptive, just so that it starts paying attention to them, but it might not necessarily want to eat them. So it can be challenging in that, because the players are suddenly aware that they're being toyed with, with a creature that doesn't necessarily reason in the same way they do, doesn't see them as equals or something worthy of being communicated with, or in fact is not even capable of being communicated with in the normal sense. It becomes a matching of egos. A good example of that would be a bestial dragon like a wyvern, or some sort of a dire wolf or dire bear, where you're in its terrain and it's messing with you. It's just intelligent enough to be cunning and cruel, but not intelligent enough to actually communicate. So that can be a challenge as well. So yeah, don't be afraid to use limited usage abilities. Like I say, you are encouraged to equip creatures which would have equipment, and there are no restrictions on what equipment you can give to those creatures. There is also no onus on you to have equipment that can be raided by the players afterwards. Like I mentioned previously, it could, if you're caught out and all of a sudden they've got these items, then suddenly it's a limited use item, or it must be recharged by taking to a certain place at a certain time. so that it can absorb exactly right arcane ambient energies. You can come up with any reason to take the power out of the hands of the players if it's not appropriate that they have it. So, yeah, there's that. And using rechargeable abilities for the creature that are unusual. So if it's an ability that you just want to have an effect once in the combat, then it only recharges once per day. Or if it must do something in combat in order to reset that ability, it could be an environmental effect, like it needs to reset a trap, or recharge a bomb, or some sort of area effect, or it must recast a ritual to summon another creature. That sort of thing. So, and with terrain, yeah, study up on traps and things like that. Traditional sort of pit traps and kissing maiden traps, which is where stones come bouncing out of the ground to hit opponents in the face. All sorts of swinging blades and pendulum traps and ropes and grapples and pulleys and darts and that sort of thing. There's plenty of resources out there for traps and things that you can throw at your players. And all sorts of really gnarly things that you can do, particularly with some of the environmental effects I've had with using the special abilities of creatures to do very unusual things with them. And I'll cover more on trap creatures in a future video, because it's definitely worthy of pouring out some of my knowledge on that one, because I'm particularly cunning when it comes to that sort of thing. So, yeah, just a quick note before I get into my monster video, and I'll be back with another genie video just after this. Thanks for listening, everyone.
So let me be your source of inspiration. Bass rumble through your spine, feel that vibration. This is the solution to the problems that you're facing. And this could be your ride to any given destination. Giving you all of my energy, ain't got no time to think about an enemy. Let go to anyone who's been a friend of me. Get down with your boy.